All right, seventh graders, we are moving on to Unit 17, Unit 17, Part 1, and we're talking about probability and odds. So we'll touch on this. You've probably done very basic versions of this. We'll do a little bit more complicated this year, and then you'll really dive into it when you get to high school. So if you look at the first page or the front page of your notes, there are a lot of definitions, so make sure you get all these written down. I'll read through them. Feel free to pause this whenever you need to write them down. So, first definition is outcomes. Outcomes are the possible results of an experiment. So an example of an experiment when we're talking about probability would be to roll a number cube or flip a coin. So if you're going to roll a number cube, all the outcomes would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. A number cube is just a dice. So the possible outcomes or the possible results are called outcomes. An event is an outcome or a collection of outcomes. So my outcomes are 1 through 6. My event could be to roll a 1 or to roll an odd, roll an even, roll a number greater than 2. Those are all possible events. Once you have figured out what an event is, your favorable outcomes are all the outcomes for that event. So say that I decide that my event is to roll an odd number. All my favorable outcomes would be 1, 3, and 5 on that number cube. If I was flipping a coin and my event was to flip heads, then the heads would be the only favorable outcome. So then to write out your probability, so we're right down here, make sure you pay attention to this, this is kind of the whole point of it. We would put capital P, and in parentheses we put our event, like say rolling an even number. And we put that in the parentheses. And then it's going to be written as a fraction. So the numerator is going to be the number of favorable outcomes. The denominator is going to be the total number of possible outcomes. So when we do a probability, we're doing what we want, the favorable over the total. Moving on, a theoretical probability is just based on knowing all the equally likely outcomes. So say I do it based on the fact that I know that there are 6 sides to a number cube, but I don't actually roll the number cube. That would be a theoretical probability. An experimental probability would be if you actually did the experiment. So if I actually rolled the number cube 10 times, that'd be experimental probability. Moving on a little bit further, we have a number line set up here. Okay, this says interpreting probabilities. A probability can be anywhere between 0 and 1, which I know 0 to 1 isn't a big gap, but we're talking about all the decimals in between. We can write them as decimals. We can write them as fractions. We can write them as percents. But it's always going to be between 0 and 1. So if the probability is 0, that means there's absolutely no chance it's going to happen. If the probability is 1, that means for sure it's going to happen. So then if you think about it, it's between 0 and 1, probability is 0.5 or 1/2 or 50% when you have it half the time. Anything less than 50% is going to be less likely. Anything more than 50% or more than 0.5 is going to be more likely. And then on the bottom of the page, we have finding odds. So everything from interpreting probabilities as well as probabilities, these last 2 definitions go with finding odds. So when we did probability, it was number of favorable outcomes over the total. Odds are a little bit different. So when we do odds in favor, that's going to be the number of favorable outcomes over the number of unfavorable outcomes. And then odds against is the number of unfavorable outcomes over the number of favorable outcomes. So remember, when we say favorable outcomes, that means what we want to happen. Unfavorable is what we don't want to happen. If you'll notice when you do odds, for both of these, you don't see the total anywhere. Okay? They're going to add up to the total, but you're never actually just writing the total down. Okay, make sure you get all those definitions written down. All right, on the back, we'll actually look at some examples. So it says, use the spinner to answer questions 1 through 3. So our first question is, what is the probability the spinner stops on a multiple of 2? Okay, so I would write capital P, in parentheses, I put my event. My event is multiple of 2. Okay, so that's just a label. Then on the top, I put my favorable outcome. So if you look, multiples of 2 would be 2, 4, and 6. So there's 3 favorable outcomes over the total, which would just be 6. I did need to reduce that to 1/2. So the probability of landing on a multiple of 2 is 1/2. For my next one, it says, what are the odds against stopping on a number greater than 4? Okay, so odds against is the unfavorable outcome over the favorable outcome. So it says a number greater than 4. I have two numbers greater than 4, 5 and 6. Since it's odds against, I would put the 4 numbers that are not greater than 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, over the 2 that are. And then I need to reduce that to 2 over 1, or I can just say 2. Okay, so the odds against stopping on a number greater than 4 are 2. The third one says, what are the odds in favor of stopping on a number less than 6? So it says a number less than 6. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up a little bit so you can see our center. So a number less than 6 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All of those are less than 6. So it says, what are the odds in favor? So that's the favorable outcomes, which are 5, over the unfavorable outcomes, which is just 6, just 1. So that'd be 5 over 1, or 5. Alright, let's move on. It says each letter in the word probability is written on separate slips of paper and placed into a bag. A letter is chosen at random from the bag. So it says, what is the probability that the letter chosen is a B? So I'm going to start by writing P, parentheses, probability of, and then I'm going to write B because that's what I'm going to choose. So I do the favorable outcomes over the total. So there's 2 B's, so I'd write a 2, and then if I count those up, there's 11 total letters, so it'd be 2 over 11. Next it says, what is the probability of the letter chosen as a vowel? So I'm going to put P, and then I'm going to put vowel inside the parentheses, because that's my event. I count up all the vowels, there's 4 vowels over 11 total letters. For number 6, it says, what are the odds in favor of choosing a consonant? So that's consonants to vowels, so it's favorable to unfavorable. So when I count them up, there's 7 consonants over 4 vowels. So that's favorable over unfavorable, because it's the odds in favor. If it was the odds against, it'd be the opposite. Now I could also write that 7 to 4 if I wanted, or 7 over 4. When we do odds, they're usually not written as fractions, they're written as with the word 2. Number 7 says you plant 40 seeds of a certain flower and 26 of them sprout. Find the experimental probability of the next flower seed planted will sprout. First off, make a note that it tells us this is an experimental probability because you're actually planting flowers. You plant 40, 26 of them sprout. So we put the number of trials that actually worked out, which is 26, over the total number of trials, and then I just need to reduce that, and I get 13 over 20. Alright, here are 4 review problems that you need to take care of. Make sure you ask me any questions that you have.